extend. Coffee with the pastor, cheers my friend.
Welcome to another episode of Coffee with a Pastor. We have coffee, and then the wonderful Pastor Ruthie is joining us with, what kind of tea do you have, Pastor Ruthie?
I picked the acai berry tea.
Okay.
Which I've never had before.
You'll have to let me know how it is. Let's see. What's the review? What's the review on that tea?
It's very good.
Good? Okay,
yeah.
Wonderful.
It's very yummy.
Well, thank you guys for joining us this week. We have a bit of a different episode because rather than just hearing from another one of our pastors about what God is saying to them, we got a question about ordination. What does it mean to be ordained? How can somebody who is a pastor and not have gone through the ordination process be a pastor? What does ordination mean to our church? And so we thought it would be a good idea to bring the one and only Pastor Ruthie Siders, who helped to outline our ordination process, to talk about this question. So Ruthie, thank you for joining us.
No, it's really fun.
Well, tell us a little about your role, what you do here.
Okay. So I came here 10 and a half years ago as pastor of Next Gen, which meant babies to high school across all the campuses. And most of my career has been spent in children's or youth ministry, family ministry, student ministry, all those kinds of things. So for some reason, they thought I could do that job. But then we did some restructuring, and they asked me to move into senior leadership as the pastor of central ministry.
Well, Ruthie, you've been my supervisor in one part of my role back when I did elementary ministry, which I loved, and you lead our central team. So I've had the benefit of being able to experience your leadership and just learn from you in a lot of ways, and I'm just really, really grateful for you and your leadership. You helped to ordain me. You were on my ordination council and committee. And we'll probably talk about the ordination process. But during the council, they'll ask you questions. And at one point, I was having a tougher time answering a question, and Ruthie was writing in her notebook and like kind of pointing into it, like, say this. Well, thank you for being here. So we usually start with a cheers.
Okay.
So here we go.
Cheers.
Ready? Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for
go.
being on the podcast. Well, Ruthie, I thought a good icebreaker question for you was, tell us about how you got ordained.
Okay. So it's a little bit more of a complicated question than just how did I get ordained, but it's more, when did I feel called to be ordained?
Oh, yeah.
So I went to seminary back in the early 80s because I kind of wanted to figure out the scriptures' view on women. Because I grew up in a little Baptist church in Maine, yet the 70s were filled with women's rights issues and all that stuff, and I kind of got caught up in some of that in college. Yet as a Christian, I was trying to decide, what do I do with the scripture texts that talk about women? So that's really the main reason I went to seminary in the first place.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so I didn't get the Master of Divinity back then. I got the Master of Arts so I could work with kids and do Christian education and kids ministry and student ministry, that kind of stuff. I was sitting in church literally one day. It was a communion Sunday, and my whole being longed to be at the table.
Yeah.
And I was talking with a spiritual director a few months later, and I told her that, and she said, God's calling you to be a pastor. And I said, oh, but everybody probably feels like they want to be up at the table. And she goes, no, Ruthie, not everybody wants to do that. And so I was mentored in preaching, and I ended up, going through. I had to turn my Master of Arts into a Master of Divinity because Presbyterians have a little bit more hoops to get ordained than we do here at Grace. I had to take some exams, all that stuff, and then I was finally ordained June 1st in 2003.
Congratulations.
And my mom was still alive then. She was there. My sister was there, which was kind of cool. She didn't quite understand most of it, but so who ordained me? I mean, the Holy Spirit, essentially.
Sure, yeah.
But the beauty of it was in that moment that you experienced as well is the laying on of hands.
Yes. Very powerful moment.
So the preachers for my ordination were my two mentors from that church where I first experienced that sense of call.
Yeah.
So they drove down from upstate New York to Pennsylvania to preach my ordination service.
That's cool.
And then my husband, who was already ordained at the time, he and I officiated at the table and we served communion.
Oh, that's really nice.
At my ordination
That's really
service.
cool.
So that was really, because it felt sort of full circle.
Yeah, full circle moment. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about more like, what does ordination mean? What's the process? And I think that your story speaks to a couple things that I really enjoy. One, it really speaks to the call aspect of ordination. And two, I really think it's powerful that you were ordained in a different denomination. And I think it speaks to something I love about our church as we talk about generous orthodoxy, about majoring in the majors and minoring in the minors, and appreciating a really wide variety of theology and practice. So I think that's really cool. So with all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is ordination? What does it mean to be ordained?
Yeah. So I think it means to be set apart for a specific purpose, for a specific call. And like I mentioned a few moments ago that you agreed to, that moment of the laying on of hands, that comes right out of the book of Acts, when the disciples were just so busy teaching as well as trying to meet the physical needs of the people around them, that they decided to set apart people who they called them deacons, and they set them apart to take care of the needs of the people so that the disciples, could do more of the work of preaching. And when they set them apart, they laid hands on them.
Oh, wow.
And so it gives me goosebumps to think this tradition of the laying on of hands has been passed down since Peter and James and John.
Yeah, wow. That's very cool.
And Philip and, all those. So that's part of it, is to be ordained, is to be set apart for this role.
Well, thank you for that. And if you haven't seen an ordination service, the laying on of hands moment is incredibly special. All of the pastors and ordained people in the room are called up and lay hands on you and pray for you. It's definitely something that will stick with me till to as far as my memory can take me. So tell us a little bit about what is the process of getting ordained like, and then maybe after that, what's the like. Some of us have the pastor title and are not ordained, and some of us are both. What? How does that happen? I don't really know. Yeah, I was gonna come and talk about it last week, and I was like, I don't think I actually know. I need to ask Ruthie to be here.
So let's tackle that one first, and then that'll lead into our process. I did kind of think that was odd when I came to Grace Chapel, that someone could be a pastor but maybe not even have a seminary degree, not necessarily feel called to be a pastor, not even sure they have the kind of gifts and skills you expect in a pastor, but it was kind of more a title of advancement, that you might be a director for 4 or 5 years and then you're a pastor. And so I sat down with our last longtime senior pastor, Brian, and I said, so tell me how this has evolved over the years, because I had been on 2 ordination councils and since I'd gotten here, and I did really respect that part of the process. But I said, it really feels kind of like our younger staff have no agency. If they feel called to be a pastor, they're sitting around waiting for their name to get picked. So can I update the ordination process? And he said, sure. And I did tell him, if I'm turning us into Presbyterians, you can tell me to stop. And he laughed and said, no, we
sneaking it in.
We don't necessarily do this as well as we could. So our process now is somebody who feels a call to be ordained. They meet with me and they send me a note that put it in writing, their desire to enter the ordination process. They do need to have a master's in some theological subject. Doesn't necessarily have to be the Master of Divinity, but they do need to have a master's in a theology-related field. And then they would write a statement of faith. They write their statement of call, and they also write their stance on marriage and gender and sexuality, because we are egalitarian, which makes us very unique among non-denominational churches. And the elders kind of, if we're licensing people to marry other people, we want to be sure we're all on the same page. So they submit all that paperwork, and then we bring them before the Board of Elders. And the elders then would license them
Yes.
That's the first step. That was your first step. So they get licensed at that meeting, which means they can actually do a wedding.
Perform weddings.
You know, they can officiate public communion, officiate public baptisms. And then they go into the ordination. And so the elders will appoint at least one actively serving elder, and then maybe a previous elder and me, and the three of us become the committee that walks alongside the ordination person, the candidate, and you need to write a very long statement of faith of your own personal convictions. I had to write one when I was in seminary once. It had to be a 30-page paper.
Ooh. Ours was not, mine was not that long.
No, it did not need to be that long. And so I actually used one of the confessions in the Presbyterian Book of Confessions to kind of frame out my time.
Oh, yeah.
What you and a few others have done is used Grace Chapel's Articles of Faith that are on our website. And so you use that just to frame. It gives you a way to frame your paper. Because when you're sitting there thinking, I have to write
see the blank page,
a 15 to 20 page paper on what do I think and what do I believe.
Yep.
I don't know how to start. So having something that frames that. Then when we, the committee, feel like you're ready to defend that paper, and I really take that responsibility very seriously. I don't want anyone feeling unprepared to go into their council.
Yep.
So then we sit down, we talk about who do you want to have on your council, preferably 3 people who are already ordained, a couple pastors from Grace Chapel. It can be former professors or teachers. And so and congregation members. So we gather with you. Everybody's read your paper, and we take about an hour and a half or so and just kind of ask probing questions. You know, tell me more about this, or tell me more about that, or what do you think about this? Even some practical questions. How would you approach this pastorally, kind of thing?
Yeah.
And then the ordinand steps out of the room. We sit there. We chat about the things we thought were great, and then there's sort of 3 possible outcomes. One is we approve you with no edits needed to your paper. 2, we approve you to be ordained, but we do want some edits to your paper that you'll resubmit to your committee. Or 3, we don't yet approve you. There's too many edits, too many questions we have, and we're going to send you back to your committee to do some more work.
Yes.
And then, if you're approved, you get to plan your ordination service.
Which is super fun.
Which is
super
really fun.
Yeah.
And you can have whoever you want to speak at it, to preach the sermon, do the charge to you, the charge to the congregation. There's gifts that we bring, a stole that you wear that's kind of the symbol, the mantle of the authority of a pastor, even though we don't wear robes and stoles at Grace Chapel.
There are some occasions you can bring it out for.
Yes, I bring mine out for weddings, and then David down in Foxborough wears his whenever he officiates communion.
Oh, I love that. That's really
so
cool.
I did this past Sunday when I subbed for him.
That's really cool. I'll need to get down there when they do communion now.
Yeah. And and then your own pottery set of communion ware, which I think is just symbolic of the office.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. When I defended my paper and then you leave the room, I was like, all right, they're going to call me back. And after like 15 minutes of them like talking, deliberating about it, I was like, oh, they're actually thinking about it. I was starting to get a little worried. But it really is a really incredibly powerful process, because sometimes you're so go, you stop to think like, oh, what do I believe about some of these things? And it helps you to iron out those beliefs. And honestly, it's a helpful practice to come back to every couple of years.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share about ordination?
I mean, the one thing I just thought of was the thing with Grace Chapel being non-denominational is when you're ordained for life. You are now the Reverend Dom Bronico.
Big Rev.
Yep, big Rev. Someone who's not ordained is not a pastor when they leave Grace Chapel. They're not licensed by Grace. They're only licensed when they're here. And so if we have pastors on staff who have not gone through ordination, and maybe they would do weddings, and they can't legally do a wedding anymore because they're not on staff with Grace. They're no longer licensed by Grace. But your ordination is for life.
Ruthie, thank you for being on Coffee with a Pastor, and thank you guys for watching. And let's end with a cheers.
All right, sounds
cheers.
good.
Oh,
Cheers.
And coming around, and cheers, and over under. Here we go.
I have no idea what you're doing. I'm really old.
Thank you for watching.
Coffee with the pastor, cheers, my vibes blend.